Hello, friends. This is a perfect Mercury in retrograde live today because I don't think we got this set up in advance, and that's okay. We're so glad you're here. Welcome to Kombucha Community. I'm Hannah Ruhamah, the Kombucha Mama. Please feel free to drop any questions you have about kombucha, jun, milk kefir, water kefir, fermentation, starting a fermentation business, being a bacteria farmer, bacterial sapiens, gut health, microbiome. And all of these topics are ones that I love sharing about. And today we were going to talk about kombucha, and my new favorite mold-free, toxin-free coffee, Happy Gut Coffee. However, my brew is still brewing. So I took a little video and I'm going to share it with you in a little bit. My little winter brewing corner. I would love to see yours, of course. How are your ferments faring in these cooler temps? But I also have some other things to talk about, kind of big, bold dreams for what's next. You know, if you've been following along here in the Kombucha Camp adventure and story, we had some really big changes this year. You know, we had to change our business model and pivot out of not owning, but having our own production facility, our own 5,000 square foot warehouse. And like many small businesses, we simply weren't able to keep up with the expenses and were forced to transition out of that. And that has meant a huge change. You know, for almost 20 years, we've been manufacturing our products ourselves. Rainbow Acres, yay. We've been manufacturing our products ourselves. So we've been bacteria farmers. And it was something I swore I was never going to teach anyone how to do because it was my pride, my joy, my secrets. It took years to cultivate this process. And, you know, or is it yay? Yay me fina or yeah me fina? It took many years to decide to figure out all of the sort of tips and tricks because brewing kombucha commercially is one thing, right? So there's many buckets here. We've got brewing kombucha at home. That's its own specific process, one that we detail very thoroughly in the big book of kombucha. We're really passionate about being home brewers. Like you, I started by buying a commercial product at the store, GT's Kombucha. My thirst outgrew my budget, and I knew I had to find my own magic mushroom, and I did. I got my own SCOBY, symbiotic culture bacteria and yeast. And I really want to talk about SCOBYs because I think, unfortunately, we've kind of thrown the baby out with the bathwater, literally, in this case. And many people think the SCOBY is just the starter liquid, and that is not true. The SCOBY was specifically a term of art created in the 1990s on kombucha chat boards in order to distinguish between kombucha that you drink and kombucha the culture, because they were both called kombucha. And so Len Porzio came up with this acronym, symbiotic culture, bacteria and yeast, and it literally refers to the mushroom, right? So what is a mushroom? It's not a mushroom. It's a term of convenience, just like peppermint tea. There's no Camellia sinensis in peppermint tea, but we call it peppermint tea because we steep the leaves the same way and we drink it in a similar fashion. So kombucha is not a mushroom, but that's what they called them. They called them kombucha mushrooms because they look kind of like a mushroom cap. You know, when you don't know what something is, you're going to look to nature, you're going to look to things that are familiar and say, hey, this is what this is like. So that mushroom is what we call a SCOBY. And yes, there certainly are microbes and organisms living in the liquid as well. And they're different. There's a different composition of which microbes are where. Now, is it so different that we couldn't use starter liquid alone without a SCOBY? Certainly we could. But again, there's a reason we have tonsils. There's a reason we have an appendix. There's a reason we have a thymus gland. Our bodies didn't just grow these things and not need to use them. The misapprehension is, well, I can't, as a person, as a scientist, as a whomever, understand why this thing exists. And so therefore it must not be important. You know, in fact, that's why the Human Genome Project morphed into the Human Microbiome Project, because when they were studying our human genome, what they realized is there was a huge role that bacteria play. And they had seen bacteria in their, in the genome, but they could not fully understand their role. And because of that, they could not finish the Human Genome Project. And so this morphed into the Human Microbiome Project because, well, scientists had seen bacteria in the body. They just sort of disregarded them. They thought we were this sterile tube. Same thing in the womb. They think that's just a sterile location. And in fact, what we realize is this is why I call us bacteriosapiens. It's why I came up with this term, is because I think that encapsulates our relationship with the microbial world, which is all around us, right? We've been waging germ warfare for so long that we've forgotten how valuable our microbes are. And so many of the sides, right, bactericide and things like this, has actually given rise to what we call superbugs, because everything wants to live, including bacteria. And part of why I think we're bacteriosapiens is, well, the word bacteria comes from Greek and it means rod-shaped. And we are rod-shaped. We are tubes. We are a series of tubes. Like, we're one long tube with tubular appendages, with tubes that run through us, with tubes that make up our brain. And all of this material is made from the same really sensitive neurological tissues and stuff. And that's why, when you get butterflies in your stomach, so much of our emotions actually originate from our gut, because that's where our serotonin is made. That's where many of our chemicals are made, the dopamine. And, people go, oh, this is the first brain. I go, no, this is the first brain, because if this is out of order, so is this. It doesn't go the other way around. You don't fix this and then this works better. You fix this. You fix the gut. You fix the core of your being, right? We're also like stars. And this is the center. This is the most protected place on our whole body. And this is where we need to cultivate our health. And I'm working on a project where we're going to be breaking down into 30 days, little tips, little nuggets of information that you can implement quickly, immediately. There's a recipe with each of them, and it's going to help you to reclaim your health through improving your microbiome. Because so many things, so many factors have led to us not being as fully bacteria powered as we ought to be. As you can see, I'm very bacteria powered. And that's because I enjoy consuming my fermented foods. Now, I've also had to supplement hyperma-sleep too. Because the thing that I resisted for so long is like, well, I should be able to get everything from my food. The problem is our world is so toxic. Chemicals are being dropped on us from the sky. Chemicals are pumped into our water. We pee out chemicals and those come back into our supply. So like, we're consuming pharmaceutical drugs that aren't even ours to consume. Our hormones are out of whack. People feel terrible. And then they also put addictive chemicals in our food, the dyes, the obesogens, and then you've got the phthalates and the PFAS, right? Like, it's overwhelming, the amount of chemicals that are just in the food, the water, the air, your beauty supply products, right? And your skin is this massive organ. It's a sponge as well as a mirror, right? Because it's mirroring what's going on in your body. So, when you end up with an outbreak, the first thing I do when I get little zits is I go and I look at, in traditional Chinese medicine, they will tell you different organs are related to different parts of your skin. And so I understand, oh, that part of my body is asking for more support because it's showing me on my face where I need to be paying more attention. And if we remember that every part of our body is connected to some other part, so like our fingertips, our earlobes, our toes and feet, like our nerve endings for our entire body, for all of our organs and everything, they're connected and they have these meridians. And so there's many ways that we can support our body, support our health internally and externally, simply by doing very basic things, such as, a little massage or doing some gua sha to help release tension. Oh my gosh, I did gua sha the other night on my face. And my husband's like, oh, that's what all that moaning is. I'm like, wow, I cannot believe how much tension I'm carrying in my face alone. The mask is really intense. And see, I don't wear makeup. I'm 49. And part of it is I want to see how my life is impacting my body. It's important for me to see some of these signals, and certainly I could cover them up, but I want to see what they're telling me. And I want to be able to understand how I can continue to support my body in this journey. Of course, fermented foods is just one piece of that puzzle. So again, I invite you to drop any questions you might have about any of these topics. I'm always happy to answer those. Otherwise, I shall continue my monologue, and I have plenty to talk about. So being bacteriosapiens, it's so important that we're getting those fermented foods and drinks. So of course, at Kombucha Camp, we are bacteria farmers. And as I was saying, this year we went through a tremendous change, massive ego deaths. For myself, I thought my business will perpetuate forever and it's just going to grow and grow. And it was very optimistic, as is my nature. But then the reality set in. And in fact, it's not like I didn't have warning signs. It's not like I didn't have, even my husband saying, hey, you got to be careful. This isn't necessarily going to work out the way you think it will. And he was right. But it took me going through that process of failure. And oh gosh, was it intense, to have to clear out so much energy, so much stuff that hadn't been dealt with for so long. And so now the realization I've had is like, oh, I had to lose that space. I had to go through this downsize, or as I call right sizing, of my life, of my business, because in fact, what I am is a master teacher, and I need to teach more people. I need to teach more people how to be bacteria farmers, because here's what's going to happen, guys. And of course, I have my ways in which I'm trying to push this forward, because our mission is changing the world one gut at a time. I can't do it alone. There's no way just little old me is going to be able to talk to the billions of people on this planet. But if I teach you how to brew at home and you pass that on to somebody else, or if somebody picks up my book and starts doing it themselves, or as the president and founder of the Trade Association, I help businesses. Funny comment. I help businesses grow their business, become more stable. Those are all ways in which we're going to change the world. We have to do it together. We have to do it in symbiosis. We have to do it with our mother culture, like our mother culture, in symbiosis. And that means in collaboration. And so to that point, what I realized is I need to teach more people how to be bacteria farmers, because as our model has shifted to one of drop shipping, where we're working with trusted partners who are cultivating our strains, who are, putting our culture forward. Now, first of all, I know it's going to evolve and change because our culture has evolved over time. And so that's fine. That's great. It means it's going to continue to grow and meet the needs of the moment, as opposed to staying stagnant in one set way of being. Like human beings, we're dynamic, we're resilient, we're constantly changing, we're evolving. And so is our culture. The kombucha culture is what I'm referring to here. But what I realized is I need more quality bacteria farmers, because as I've looked about for other folks, there's a dearth. And like I said, what I see is a wave of way more fermentation becoming part of our lifestyles. So another way that I really hope to achieve this, and this is my big, bold, audacious next dream. I have a website. I will drop it here for you in just a moment so you can read my little platform, but I would like to nominate myself to be the first ever fermentation czar. Okay, so if you're not familiar with this term of art, czar is a term used in our government, in our United States government, that represents someone who's in charge of a certain task. It's an unofficial title. And, I'm kind of a silly girl, so I think it's funny to call myself a fermentation czar, a job that doesn't exist. But here's my goal with this role. First of all, it's to make sure that fermented foods are on the nutritional plate or pyramid or whatever the heck shape we're going with, rhomboid, star, why not? So I want to make sure that everybody knows how vitally important it is that you eat fermented foods every day, because this is how your ancestors ate. We didn't get here. We didn't get to this present moment without fermentation. We did not get to be these brilliant bacteriosapiens collaborating with numerous species and of yeast and bacteria and viruses and all kinds of cells and different things in our body without fermentation. We need fermentation. So that's number one. Let us get fermentation onto that plate so that everybody understands this is what we do. There are condiments. Ketchup was fermented fish sauce from Indonesia. Soy sauce is fermented. Mustard was these little balls that would, we would then reactivate in liquid. But they were ground up and were travel friendly. Ketchup also used to be made from mushrooms. There's all kinds of things. There's sauerkraut. Why do you have sauerkraut on a Reuben? Because you can't digest all that meat without something helping you to break it down. The ferments of butter, raw cheese, raw milk, all of these have these nutrient-dense microbes present. Kefir, yogurt. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on in terms of how fermentation has impacted our lives. And they are so important for our health and for our proper functioning, because the reality is, as much as we've sort of waged germ warfare, and germ theory from the 1850s has asserted that, bad germ equals disease. But really, there's terroir involved, right? So how come multiple people can be exposed to the same germ and yet they have different responses to it? And that's because of terroir. So terroir is what you cultivate inside your body. Terroir is what's in the soil. And terroir is why our vegetables today don't have nearly the same nutritional value as they did in the past, because we have, again, put chemicals and depleted. We've not followed the rhythms of nature. We've tried to mechanize and force it to follow what makes financial sense, but doesn't necessarily make sense to the natural rhythms of the world. And so when we live more in harmony with the natural rhythms of the world, we end up with abundance, with infinite regeneration. Well, and see, I would say that bad bacteria is certainly, it could exist, but really it's opportunistic. And this is why, like, one rotten apple spoils the bunch. This is why you have to cultivate your friend group. You need to make sure that you're with people who are supportive and kind to you, because if you're only, well, and you need them to hold you accountable and to also call you on your shit. Like, I'm not saying that, but people who actually are on your side, on your team, not those who are tearing you down. And the reason for this is terroir, because it's called opportunistic pathogens. When there's an opportunity for something to over proliferate and take hold and take root, this is what, like, we all have Candida albicans in our body. We need it. We all have H. pylori. We need it. But when it's allowed to over proliferate due to extenuating circumstances, that's when it becomes a negative. And that's where a culture needs to have certain dominant organisms, some keystone species that hold things in place. And of course, I'm meaning this on every metaphorical level you can imagine, right? We need to have, good guys, many of them holding certain values, certain pillars. And of course, there can be other types of ideas and things floating around, but the dominant ideas need to be those that support health, that support life, that support vitality. And here's the thing, bacteria are going to eat each other because they got to eat too. So, some of what we need to cultivate are the organisms that are going to get rid of other organisms in our body and things like that. So first and foremost, it has to be on the nutrition plate. The second part of this is regulation, right? Somehow, crazy me, put myself forward as the head of the Kombucha Brewers Association. There have been people who said, well, she doesn't brew commercially. How dare she? What is this role she's choosing to take on? And I cannot tell you, I mean, honestly, it's probably true in every single industry. There are characters, there are people who have their own desired goals and dreams, and they don't necessarily want to work together. And so the fact that I didn't have my own commercial business was, in fact, a plus, because it meant that I could bring commercial producers together. Now, I am passionate about kombucha. I know that changing the world one gut at a time, kombucha is a doorway for that. It's a way into all of those things. And so if we can just get a kombucha, yogurt, or whatever into somebody's hand and help them feel for themselves the actual physiological benefits of consuming these foods, that would then open them up to everything else. Like sauerkraut smelled like dirty socks to me, and I did not like it. I thought it was disgusting. I started drinking kombucha, and then I was like, let me try some sauerkraut. It is so delicious. And I love kraut juice, and I will have unintentionally given myself a cleanse by drinking too much of it when they sell it in those bottles. Oh my gosh, so delicious. But definitely will clear out some stuff if you overconsume them. But see, that's bowel tolerance. Again, that's a feedback loop. It's our bodies telling us what we can and can't do based on a physiological response. And yet it's not overly harmful, especially because then we get the information we need, which is, hey, don't overconsume this, consume it in safer quantities, and you're going to do fine and feel great as a result. So common sense regulation. I have worked with the industry. I understand the challenges. We have been advocating for the Kombucha Act, keeping our manufacturers from being unfairly taxed while championing Health Act. We have been attempting to educate legislators, and anyone who's done any kind of work in the government understands this is a slog. There isn't common sense. There isn't just like, hey, this makes sense, let's update this. This makes sense, let's help industry to thrive. This makes sense, let's help it grow. It's all about who you know, what you know, and how much money you're able to donate. And as a very small industry, we don't have deep pockets. And so it's been really challenging. And yet everyone we talk to, everyone we share this information about, it makes sense. And so as fermentations are, that would certainly provide a platform with which to come up with common sense regulation. fermented foods need to be part of the cottage food laws. And for whatever reason, they were considered dangerous or too unsafe to include in those for many states. And so something that people should be able to make safely at home, as we've done for thousands and thousands of years, is something that you aren't able to even access. You're required to show testing and different things for potential contaminants, which could literally never exist if you had any concept of the science behind fermentation. And it's not just the low pH, it's the organic acid profile, it's the living microbes. See, I don't know that the state wants everything pasteurized. I think that there is commercial interest, because pasteurization is a way to cover up sloppy practices, right? Why do you pasteurize milk? Well, because you're not treating the cows well. They're in unhealthy conditions. You're pumping them full of weird chemicals and hormones. You're not keeping them clean. You're forcing them into feedlots, which are completely unnatural. See, I think humans, there's a certain amount of people that need to live on the land, that need to be farmers. Not everybody should be living in cities. And so this mechanization, this industrialization of our food supply is what's led to so many of our negative health outcomes. And how can we get people back on the land? How can we decentralize the food supply? How can we get small producers making things, buying things from your friends and neighbors, going to the farmer's market, bartering for stuff? Like, we don't know what's going to happen in this world. And I posit this has been true for every generation. Every generation has gone through end times are near. Every generation has gone through radical change. Every generation, this just happens to be our turn, right? And so that would be part 2, is common sense regulation, so that people can make these things at home. They can sell them to their friends and neighbors. They can give them to their communities, because there is no commercial interest. There is no industrialized company that can make enough fermented foods and drinks to supply the entire nation. With kombucha, we're talking about a household penetration in terms of who's actually heard the term of like 10%. 90% of America has never heard of the word kombucha or what it does or how it can help them. Of course, here in California, we're saturated. You know, this is the world's largest producer of kombucha in the world, between health aid, GTs, and even hard kombuchas. Like Los Angeles area, Southern California is the, you know, the hotbed of kombucha for production. But how can we get it to other places? How can we get it into smaller farms? How can it be that you make a few bottles at home and you're able to barter that for soap or milk or cheese or eggs, right? Like things that are really valuable and necessary, and can cost a lot of money if you don't have something to trade for them. So that would be part 2. And then, of course, education, right? Yes, making these things at home. We've been doing it for thousands of years, and we still have to adhere to some safety regulations. We still have to have an understanding of, why does the fermentation work? What are the potential pitfalls? How do we correct for those? You know, so all of that information, this is what I mean by this revelation I've had, that I need to teach people the secrets I've learned over the years, because making a bacteria farm to sell culture so that people can propagate their own at home is different from brewing kombucha to sell to drink. These are 2 very different processes, even though they use the same raw materials. And so education, and this is from like kindergarten, and we should be fermenting in schools. This should be part of your science curriculum, just like your school garden should be there. So you can take those veggies and ferment them and learn about fermentation, learn about science, learn about bacteria and yeast and microbes and the natural cycle of things and how things break down and how they grow, right? All the way through college, just like there's beer brewing courses you can take where you can learn to be a commercial beer producer. We need those level of courses. And so I'm working on creating a producer course that I'll be launching next year. We're going to do a beta mode, which means it's going to be super affordable because we're going to build it together. I have so much knowledge and information, and sometimes I forget to teach some of the really basic stuff because it's already ingrained in me. And so I'm excited to offer this course, to work with a small group of producers and to help teach them so that we can create a class that anybody can take anytime, so they can learn the techniques and methods to brew safely and to create, whether it's a bacteria farm or commercial beverages that they're going to sell to their friends. So, you know, take this little side hustle, this hobby. I'm going to tell you, it's a labor of love, emphasis on the labor. Like, this is not an industry for the faint of heart. You have to really feel that passion, that desire to heal your community. And so many people do. And you know why? Because it's healed themselves. because they have experienced it. It almost sounds religious, and yet it's not, because it's microbes, and microbes are magic. And why are they magic? They're magic because a really good magician, when he does a trick or she does a trick, you cannot see how that trick is done. And that's what bacteria are like. They are like that. So I think we're going to eventually realize that pasteurization is something that is an excuse for having unhealthy or unsafe conditions, because just pasteurize it. Just pasteurize it. But if we actually had safety metrics in place and appreciated small batch, and didn't necessarily have to ship everything across the world, but instead could get it from a closer destination, you wouldn't necessarily need that. And we'd need more cold supply chain, which I think is really important and valuable. Part of why we pasteurize is like, there isn't a refrigerator to store this in. There isn't a cold truck we can transport it on. And that's a huge problem in Europe, because this is an ancient, their cities are much older than ours are, and they really don't have as much room. And so they've leaned into more of from concentrate products and pasteurized products. Now, I'll still say any kombucha is better than no kombucha, because and this is what's so cool about microbes and DNA and bacteria, is even if you consume quote unquote dead bacteria, these are called postbiotics, their DNA, right? This is why we're bacterial sapiens too. I'll share another example of it. But when the cell wall ruptures, the DNA is set free. Other microbes can come and absorb that DNA. And this is how the superbugs evolve, is they just keep grabbing the pieces of DNA that help them to outwit or stay alive. Right? They'll hide. This is why you have to take antibiotics for such a long period of time, because microbes, these bugs will hide in your body, because they know that after a certain point, then they'll be able to come back out again. So they're very clever, just like we are. And the way that I think about this is memes, right? What's a meme? It's got the DNA of a meaning, of a something, a scene from a movie, a phrase, a cartoon, right? And then somebody comes and puts their flavor on top of it and just keeps twisting and changing and twisting and changing. And that, to me, is bacteria sapien in action. That's our creativity. That's our intelligence. That's how we do these things. So regulation, education, and then research. I'm so passionate about the research. Here's the thing. Again, people might say, oh, well, it's like religion. You just believe these things. Well, no, I don't believe them. I physiologically experience them. Moreover, this is the frustrating thing about our current way in which the scientific method is applied. And I'm using these words very specifically. The scientific method is wonderful for ascertaining a single variable. But the reality is, when we're living in the world, right? Because when they try to do these trials, everybody has to eat a similar diet. They have to consume a similar thing, blah, 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 blah. But you're never going to be living an identical lifestyle. You're not going to have the same stressors and emotional problems. You're not going to be consuming the same foods. You're not going to be drinking the same water supply. And yet what we've seen with kombucha, like its reputation, helps with diabetes, helps mitigate cancer, helps with metabolic disease, hepatoprotective, that's your liver, protects your kidneys. We've seen these in mice models. We've seen these in just humans talking about it. We've seen research in Russia where they gave it to babies who had colic. Colic, something that they don't even understand how it happens or why it is. It's this distress that causes them to cry, but you give them a little kombucha and they CTFO, right? Like, why? On a certain level, I don't care about the why, but that's what scientific method attempts to understand. What's important is it works. And that's the thing about science that we forget. The reason we apply a scientific method is because the phenomena already exists. It is already true that kombucha is going to support a healthy liver. It's already true. Kombucha is going to help with your metabolism. It's already true. So many people have said, I started drinking kombucha. I was able to reduce the amount of insulin I was taking. All of this is true. Now, your results are going to vary. Everybody's an individual. But, that's what's exciting about attempting these human trials, as we start to then put a different body of evidence behind it. But I think throwing out the anecdotal evidence is ridiculous, because that, to me, is the validation, is the proof. Now, is kombucha the only thing that's doing it? Of course not. There's multiple things that have to happen and change. But what happens is when you start to change that internal chemistry inside of your body, many things go along with that. You start to make different choices. You make healthier choices, right? When we're in a negative slide, we're making all kinds of bad choices, and they just keep piling on top of each other. And yet the opposite is true. When we start when we start with getting the the good guys in there, we get the good guys in there, then the good things happen. See, like this. Bacteria powered, passionate. How do we get started? Yeah, well, go to kombuchacamp.com. So let me just got my website here. Camp with a K, because we're cute and clever over here. You know, I'm a big word nerd. I love languages. I speak Mandarin Chinese. I speak Spanish as my second language. I adore French. J'adore le français. You know, I think it is so important that we find ways to communicate, to connect. And for me, the microbes are the magic. You know, so much like you have a microbial cloud that has a unique DNA signature, just like a fingerprint, right? Imagine that. You literally have a force. Now imagine you're feeding your force field with things that actually empower you. Here's the weird thing that's happening, right? I figured this out a long time ago, is that, you know, our microbes not only have the ability to keep us alive, to regenerate, to create new cells, to create new neuronal networks, to literally continue to grow and rehabilitate. And yet those very same microbes, when the chemistry changes, i.e. you die, and the chemistry within your body changes, they are there to break you down, to turn you into soil. You become the food for the microbes, just as the microbes have given you life. And the problem is when we overconsume these chemicalized products, be they in food or, you know, beauty products or even scents, right? We have so many artificial scents and things that are really harming our bodies as well. When we overconsume them, we're sending the wrong signal. We're saying, hey, we're ready to decompose and die. But you know what? We're still alive. So that is completely the wrong message. So how do we change the message? We change the message by changing the inputs. Now, here's the thing. This is a real thing, right? Because the people who need fermented foods the most often are people who take one whiff and go, oh, that's disgusting. Oh, no, I only want to eat rice and pasta and, you know, white flour-based products. That's a gut and dysbiosis. And how many children are like that? And it's because they've been injected with all kinds of weird things from a young age that messes with their immune systems, which aren't ready to handle or deal with all of these external adjuvants that are being added to them. And as adults, right, we reflect how our bodies have or haven't been able to navigate being poisoned from a young age. And so what's really vital is that we're detoxing, that we're putting these good microbes back in our body, because they are going to start to create different changes. There have been so many studies showing that children who suffer from some of the most extreme versions of autism, no eye contact, nonverbal, when they change their diet, right? So they look at their microbiomes, and first of all, they see their microbiomes are very different from a healthy person. I don't know causation correlation here. That's not really what's important to me. What's important is when you start to amend their microbiome, they start to exhibit more normal human behaviors. They can make eye contact. They start to be able to speak. I'm not saying it's a perfect cure for anything, but it gives us a lot of hope that that is some really powerful stuff. And so it makes sense, even if we think we're the tip-top picture of health, to include these microbes in our diet, to make sure that we have this, these good guys on our side, that our force field is literally empowered with that. And so so microbes communicate through what's called quorum sensing. Maybe that's your ESP, right? Maybe the reason that you can sense different things is because your force field is so strong and it's picking up information. So like there are times you meet a person and you're like, oh my God, we're like best friends instantly. There's just this great chemistry, this connection. Maybe chemistry is, of course, pheromones, which are scents, but also maybe those are chemical communications between our microbes. And so if you have a weaker gut, if you have a weaker force field, then you're not going to make as good a judgment as you could. You're not going to pick up on those signs as easily, and potentially, right? All potentially. None of this is hardwired. These are just like theories and things that bubble up to me in my consciousness as I engage in them. So all of this was to say research is so important, because wouldn't it be amazing if we could have, instead of spending so much money only on things that can generate revenue for a specific company, right? So much science is bought and paid for by those who benefit from it. What if we could create science that, research rather, that benefits the entire collective by validating what our ancient ancestors knew and understood in a way that really helps us to, from our modern perspective, comprehend why it's so vital and valuable to include these foods in our diet. So fermentations are me for nutrition plate, for common sense regulation, for education from K through college and for research. So that's my little platform. I'm going to drop the link to my website here so you can take a look and read more about what I've got going and what I'm hoping to accomplish with all of this. And yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. And what do you think? Now, here's the reality. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get this job. But I figure if I talk about it and I share it, it's going to end up getting to the right people, whoever that is, who might be doing this. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, oh, politics and this and that. This is not political. This is health. This is human life. This bridges any type of political situation. This is what is needed for us to be healthy, to be intelligent, to work to the highest level of our abilities. We are the most unique country in the world in terms of what we've been able to achieve in our system. Is it perfect? Heck no. And so many people who come from other places, first of all, they want to come here. They want the opportunities that we have. And what can we do to continue to leverage that? How can we continue to move this forward? And I think there's been a really good shift in the conversation around the level to which pharmaceutical companies have not been held responsible for the products that they create. There's a huge conversation right now about insurance and, the ways in which people who are really hurting and struggling are not able to get the support they need, or they can only go to surgery or different things that may not be the best thing for them long term, or may not support their health, might addict them to opioids or painkillers for the rest of their lives. And people are not wanting to choose these things. And yet, because that's what is covered by insurance, they feel they have no other choice. And so this conversation, however it's been started, I think is really important. And this is, your health is your wealth. Your health is your wealth. And here's what I truly believe. I truly believe that, first of all people are good. I know there's bad people out there too. But what I mean is, when you're in a state of health, when you're in a state of flow, when you're in a state where you don't feel terrible all the time, where you can actually care for yourself, I just feel like people will have a desire to engage in community. It's when we don't feel good that we don't engage. It's when we are struggling that we don't reach out. And those are the times when we need to reach out the most. I get it. I'm an optimist. I am going to be that person who's going to imagine the best. And of course, I understand that there are bad people and bad things and dark shadows. I am a Scorpio after all, so I do a lot of shadow work for myself and the collective. And there's no doubt that there is a dark side to things, and it's necessary, right? Just as we're coming to the solstice, we're coming to the darkest time of the year. We're coming to that point in these cycles where we need to go within, where we need to get quiet, where we need to allow ourselves to sit in the darkness, in the silence, because the light is going to return. And with the light comes the energy, and with the light comes the hustle, with the light comes right? And we cannot be in a constant state or we burn ourselves out. And so this is why we need the dark, the light, the dark, the light, the ebb, the flow. And this is our kombucha, how it grows in a flow. It grows, it diminishes, it grows, it diminishes. And that's like life, right? How many lifetimes do you get to live in one single human life? It's amazing. Yes, I'm the same person I am, and I'm completely not the same person I am. I looked in the mirror the other day, and who did I see? I saw my mother, I saw my father, I saw my grandparents, I saw my ancestors, and I saw within me, and within you too, within me is every person who's come before me, culminated into this one amazing life. And what can I do to be of service to them? What can I do to honor their legacy and their legend, to everything that they struggled with, that they went through? And of course, I've been through my own struggles and challenges. That's the whole point of Earth School, right? Is that we get to come here and have struggles and challenges so that we can grow from them. And I just feel so dang grateful that I get to live this amazing life, that Kombucha found me. I call it Kombucha Kismet, that she empowered me to be her avatar here on Earth. I feel empowered by the microbes who are magic, who are advocating for our wellness, who are wanting us to come back into balance, into homeostasis. And it's not about obliterating everything. It's about having the right balance of things. Like controls like. Good bacteria control bad bacteria. And this is what I was going to say before. The people who need it the most are often those who can't stand it. Well, a dear friend of mine, Alyssa Arnheim, gave me a wonderful tip. And that is, for your picky eaters, or for your people who are afraid of the ferments because they smell funny and are weird, give them a little bit. Hold it in their mouth, spit it out. Give them a little bit. hold it in your mouth, spit it out. I say sneak it in the Diet Coke. It doesn't matter. Somehow, some way, get some into here, because here's the reality. Here's the reality. Bitter and sour are the flavors of health and digestion. The wisdom contained within this body, the billions of years in every single cell. Like, we all have access to this information. We all have access to this deep, entrenched wisdom. And yet we're the only animal on the planet that can't figure out what to eat for dinner. It's wild, because the reality is we know. And it's when we clear away the propaganda, when we clear away the programming, when we clear away the financial incentives. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with commerce. I love commerce. I love capitalism. I think there's so much value in trading money and goods and services. But there's also a point at which, right, it's not money is evil. It's the love of money that is the root of all evil. It's when you only care about the money and you don't care about the means, you don't care about the outcome. That is the real problem. But money in and of itself, like, that's abundance, that's blessings, that's bounty. And how can we invite more of that? Well, you start making something that is infinite abundance in action. If you give an organism what it needs to thrive, it will. And that counts for your fermentation cultures. That counts for you. Give yourself what you need to thrive, and you will, I promise. It's so exciting to be a bacteria sapien, and it's so exciting to be able to share these messages with you. And, so please feel free to ask any questions about fermentation. I'd be happy to help. We're bacteria farmers. We have quality kits and cultures. I've got these classes coming up. So if you're interested in becoming a bacteria farmer, if you're interested in starting your own commercial kombucha business and don't quite know where to go, you're a home brewer, or maybe you've never even made it, but you think there's an interesting opportunity in your community for this, reach out, because we are going to do this together. We grow together. This is another one of my phrases I've said for years, because that is the only way we grow. We can only grow together. We can't help it. But you know what, guys? I am so excited for this time of year, for the solstice, because it's just such a wonderful time to go inward and reflect. And I tell you, I have been working my butt off for the last 2 decades, and I've overstressed myself. And I have, through human design, learned how to manage my energy better. And I tell you what, this is the type of thing that feeds me. As a projector, I am here to share with the world, to teach, to guide. I'm a 5, I'm a heretic, so I bring all the weird stuff to the mainstream. I'm a 1, so I'm a research investigator. I love to find these things out. I'm a Scorpio, which I think, like, there's something about fermentation in Scorpios. We're about darkness and death and in the soil and tearing things down, because really fermentation is digestion that's happening outside of your body. Imagine that. Something's already pre-digested and you go to consume it. Oh my God, that just makes it so much easier on your body to process those nutrients, to support those microbes. So fermentation, death, soil, rebirth, it's all in that Scorpio house. I have my Sagittarius moon, which just makes me this optimist, traveler, seeker of wisdom, and I cannot help but be who I am. And then my Cancer moon, my motherly, nurturing, home body self. There's a part of me that just always wants to be home, and there's a part of me that always wants to travel. So I'm so grateful you guys are on this journey with me. We grow together, changing the world one gut at a time. Trust your gut. And I can't wait to see you again at the next community online. Join our bubbles. You'll get the full access to all our episodes, our previous podcasts, tons of information, recipes. Like, we want to load you up with information so that you can do things you really love. Check out our gift guide. It's been interesting, this transition. We've had a little trouble getting our Jun farm going. These microbes they have a personality of their own, and it's not just a recipe apply, boom. Hi, Ali. Nice to see you. So there's finesse that happens. So I know there's many people waiting on their Jun cultures. I promise you, we're cultivating them. We're making them very happy, but they are taking a little bit of time. So be patient with us through this transition. And this is why I want to cultivate more bacteria farmers in the world, because I know we're all going to need more microbes. And I want to help you figure out how you can be that steward in your community, where you can take your information, your love, your passion, and share it with other people as well. So thank you so much. I love you. And I will see you again soon. Mwah.